our first speaker, which is Amie Ichikawa. She is formally incarcerated and is doing everything she can to empower, encourage, and educate women in prison so they will fight against our erasure on the front lines inside. What is happening is so much worse than any of us could have imagined. So thank you so much, Amie, for speaking to us, and over to you.
The reason why I chose the encirclement is because I've been studying World War I and II old tactics. I figure it was a good idea because this is a war, quite literally, that we're in. And the encirclement tactic stood out because it could be translated to something that we could all do that isn't necessarily hand-on-hand combat. This is something that can be interpreted in a way to act just exactly where we are. Even the women inside can participate in this fully. So encirclement is when you're attacking your the opposition from multiple perspectives, multiple angles. The women inside have to shoulder so much of this, specifically because they are on the front lines. They're in the middle of this. They're having to sleep with the enemy every single night. So what I'm doing is trying my hardest to encourage them, educate them, and empower them. And I'm going to explain what that looks like. Hi, Barbara. These women are very downtrodden. They've been abandoned by our government. Sometimes their families, there's women inside that some of them have made me like their power of attorney. They don't have anyone. So it's extremely important that I'm able to provide them with the kind of encouragement they need to know that they are valuable and that despite being incarcerated, they still matter. So I do my best to do that within my means by constantly encouraging them. They've also been robbed of their femininity, their ability to exist as women. You know, you get into the prison and you're stripped of everything unless, you know, you're trans-identified. They strip you of your name, you become a number. You wear a uniform that is the same uniform that the men wear. It's difficult. So I send in things to remind them that they are women, that they are beautiful women that matter. So even if it's something as small as a sparkly hair clip or I don't know, things that smell good, because when you live life void of things that smell good, it's really impactful. It has a really it does something to you mentally. I remember the first time I smelled something good, it had been a couple of years and I didn't understand how important that is. It seems irrelevant on a day-to-day basis, but when you haven't smelled good in a couple of years, it really makes it a reality. How small things like that are very comforting and do remind us, you know, what the essence of ourselves is. So I do those things, and in addition to that, I try and really drive home the fact that they have to get active. I hate having to ask them to do what they have to do because they are already shouldering so much. But I think our existence as women in general is very much dependent on them not compromising or bending or submitting to this agenda. They're so tired. But I've done my best to continually communicate this point to them that we're depending on them. We're very much depending on their ability to stay in the fight and to stay focused and to get uncomfortable, as if they're not already uncomfortable enough, but they're going to have to make some more sacrifices. They're going to have to give up those contraband pajamas and their double mattresses, and they're going to have to be willing to get uncomfortable to get some of their rights restored, and to ensure that the agenda that's taking place inside never comes out here. Because I'm quite sure that what's happening inside, a lot of us on this side of the wall would probably not be able to handle this. There's a lot of things that I leave out regularly to spare the rest of you from what's happening. I do share a lot, but it's so disturbing and so horrific that I choose to leave specific things out. And I do that just because I don't think everybody has to be poisoned with the depravity and the true sickness of what is behind this whole effort to erase us. For example, I wanted to encourage the ladies inside to read The Art of War. And they told me we already have it because our state issued tablets came preloaded with it. So if you can wrap your mind around how demented that is, really, that the state would have already issued that to them without asking, without, how does that happen? It's very intentional. It's so intentional. I don't know how to explain, because I don't think I know fully how big and how sinister this plan really is. I think it's been in action for a long time, and none of us have known, because it's the most evil genius plan ever. And I think this is how we're going to combat it. So this is in the second slide I have, there's 7 securities. There's 7 human securities. And I think this tactic can be used also with parents of the ROGD children. This is kind of a tool that you can use for helping people that are coming out of like a cult-like situation, people that have very Stockholmish kind of symptoms. If we can ensure that they have these, or a semblance of the 7 securities, it's really helpful. I believe that if I can get as much of these securities locked in for the women, it's going to be that much easier for them to stand up, submit complaints, exhaust their administrative actions, so that we can start filing more lawsuits. Economic security, I do my best to make sure that if they're destitute, if they're indigent and they have nothing, that there are at least people around them that can make sure they have food security. For example, one of the ladies, actually, Tania, she never asked for anything. She never wants for anything. She's very hard on herself. And she was very, very sad recently. She lost another grandparent. So this is her 3rd since she's been incarcerated. And as simple-minded as this sounds, sending her a quarterly package that was full of food, full of, treats and snacks and just things that are comforting when you're in this environment, cheered her up. I knew she needed it too, because she never says yes. She never says yes, and she said yes almost instantly. These are the kind of things that are just going to keep them sustained long enough to get them to the point where they know and feel safe to stand up. Health security, what I've started doing lately is calling the prison medical staff, their CFOs, all kinds of people when people are having issues medically. They've started butchering the women who've decided to identify as trans. The healthcare is so poor as it is. But what they've done now is a contract with, I think, maybe the worst plastic surgeon in Southern California to do these mastectomies, and they're kicking them out of the hospital before, prematurely. There's a woman who contacted me, and she had an artery nicked during her mastectomy, and the doctor didn't tell the prison, so I had to, because they didn't want to, they're not going to see you for anything medically that isn't on record. And they didn't care that she was bleeding out. She now has an infection. It's just, it's horrendous. But that, calling, checking up, letting these people know that there is somebody and somebodies on the outside that are advocating and care about these women makes a big difference. That one phone call can get them, the antibiotics they might need to survive. I'm doing my best to make sure that nobody lines up for phalloplasty. I'm sending in photos as much as I can without being flagged of the tragedy that occurs when this happens, that they were never going to function correctly, that this is not necessary. This is experimental. So imagine what the prison is going to do. They almost did a biopsy on the wrong breast the other day of a friend. So I try to express to them, I really wouldn't trust them to make, a new genital for you. But they are in an echo chamber. They are very limited as far as information goes. So ensuring that they have as much information available in regards to their health is something I'm doing as well. And that's not exclusive to people getting double mastectomies. There's women down the hall that actually need mastectomies that are not getting adequate health care. There's a woman whose spine is bending because she needs a breast reduction. And they told her, no, this would be considered cosmetic. So I kind of fell off for a couple of days after that, because it just makes it a reality of how much they really, really, really hate us. But moving forward, the personal security, I think, happens with the encouragement, the contact, the postcards. We started a postcard campaign. One of my partners, Liz, who is a former life without the possibility of parole woman, who served almost 25 years, I think. She had a great idea, because I made postcards, but they were a little bit scary and depressing. What is DARVO? What is gaslighting? Because those terms are essential for them to understand. But she made, they're a little more handy. They've come in very, very handy in emergency situations, situations where they would require grounding, situations where they need to be able to immediately comfort themselves, because it is so shocking and scary when they're faced with a situation where they feel like their heart's going to explode because, one of the people are coming, one of the men are coming, or they're being intimidated, or they just can't cope because they have to see another person getting beaten by their new boyfriend that the state issued. They keep the postcards taped to the outside of their lockers to remind themselves these are the things that we do when we're freaking out. And if you guys have any suggestions of techniques or words of wisdom, we would be happy to put those on postcards and send them in too. That's also the fastest way of communication. It's going to take us a couple of years before we can fully develop curriculum and actually get it in without it being deemed as propaganda. So postcards are extremely effective right now. Community security, that's a little bit more complex because we struggle with that too. Oh, state-issued boyfriends, you know, the trans identified individuals have all gotten into relationships. It is very disturbing, but that's what they're going over there for. And recently I've learned that they're not just sleeping with and raping the women, but they're sleeping with each other. So these are extremely unwell, deviant individuals. So there's that. That was very disturbing, and I had to kind of take a time out. That was a tough bit of information to process last week. But again, back to the community security, trying to make sure that everyone is, there's a lot of STDs now. Trying to make sure that everyone understands that we have to put other issues on the back burner. We have to put differences to the side, especially now, more so than ever, because we have to fight together. We can't show weaknesses. I tell them regularly, you can't show emotion. They're going to hold this against you and use it to destroy you. And it's just showing chinks in the armor. So the best way to combat that is to just firmly stand shoulder to shoulder and not let them through. Flat affect, stone face, don't respond, don't react. Even if you're angry, even if you have every right to be angry, don't give them the satisfaction of knowing that you're bothered, because they're going to put that in a file and remember, oh, this is what really bothers her. This is how I'm going to tear these two powerful people apart. And this is what's constantly happening. We're giving them a playbook on how to break us down and keep us separated. It's the same thing here. There's always going to be things we disagree on. But if we don't primarily focus on those things and focus on the things we do agree on, and the war that we have to, fight in order to survive, it's just going to be a lot smoother. There's no way that we can do this as individuals anyway. I mean, we're all doing our individual part in this action, but there still has to be that unity, that togetherness in order to power through this. Political security, I don't know if we're ever going to have that again. Well, we will. I don't want to say it's impossible, but that's something I can't really do for them inside too much. That's their responsibility. They've got to stay active on the inmate advisory councils, which is also in danger very much right now, as the recent report that came out was insinuating that the trans people needed more representation on the council. Right now it's divided by race. There's a lady representative for Black, white, Hispanic, and other. Now what's going to happen, what I'm quite sure will happen, is that the transfers, the men will take the obviously trans chair from the panel or from the council, and then they'll start taking over the race seats, and then they will do their best to control the entire advisory council. So they really have to fight that. They're doing a great job. It hasn't happened yet, but I do predict in the near future that's going to be part of the plan of action. That speaking of plan of action, I would like to also say this is how disturbing, how, you know, this isn't just a physical assault. This is a full, like, mental, psychological warfare type of situation. When the men first got there, they would see each other in passing and they would say, stick to the plan. And women would message me and say, what's the plan? What's the plan? And I can't tell them because I don't know, but I know it's big and it's bad. And I'm pretty sure it's the same thing that they're planning for us on this side. So we just have to continue pushing forward and doing everything we can to encourage each other and build each other up and build the ranks. There's probably tons of women that you don't necessarily get along with. I'm going to tell you that there's a serial killer that I really can't stand, but I have to care about her just as much as I care about Tamikia or Michelle. She was recently, well, she was in a relationship with one of the men who just hates my guts, hates Lauren too. Has written a few very disturbing articles about how we need to be identified, purged, and replaced. Well, the serial killer got into a relationship with this guy, and he was choking her out a couple of weeks ago. And staff had to come in and remove him, and they moved him from that honor dorm to the next honor dorm without disciplinary action, without reprimand or anything. So they said she wants to talk, and I don't want to talk to her, but I'm going to, because that's just the way we got to do things now. Going back to how this can happen or how this is going to look on our side is yes, Lauren from Wolf or from Jackson Bone, is that you might have like an irritating neighbor who, you know, just bought a KitchenAid mixer and loves Dylan Mulvaney, but you're going to have an opportunity to talk to her at some point, and you have to take advantage of every single opportunity that you get, because every time you talk about it and raise an awareness about what's happening, you're giving a voice back to one of the voiceless. And I don't just mean the women in prison, but to the women out here who can't speak either, who are not at liberty to be as free and bold as some of us. There's people who are just as oppressed out here as the women are inside. So there's so many voices that need to be restored, and that can be one conversation at a time. And I know it's uncomfortable and people are going to call you a weirdo, and it sucks to be judged, but these are things that we have to sacrifice, because just keep in mind what the women inside are giving up to make sure that that evil plan doesn't come out here. So after, I get these 7 securities locked down, I think it's going to be a constant process. It's going to be something that happens forever. These women can go ahead. I'm hoping, this is my hope, are going to feel confident, comfortable, safe, and empowered enough to start writing their inmate complaints, because right now they're afraid to even ask for the forums because of retaliatory actions from the staff, and the men find out and they just start plotting against you. So I need them to not care, just boldly go forward, get that complaint, file it, and exhaust it, because they can't file any lawsuits until the administrative what do they call them? Until that's fully exhausted. That process takes a year. So if they start today, If they start right now and we start getting all of these complaints submitted, we can get lawsuits. But in order for them to even want to do that, they have to know that there's lawyers who care, who are going to want to do this and not make me sell my soul to retain them. If there are lawyers that could take one pro bono case a year or encourage their colleagues to do the same, it would really get us some action, because this is going to have to take place in the court system. We have to fight back. Instead of, I've given up trying to change the system. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. We have to learn it and use it like they do. And what the trans have done is, really bolster their community and gotten all this money from all these payouts, all these settlements. And this is how they have perpetuated this. This is how they've grown in numbers, and this is how they support each other. So what would it look like if we did that? They're never going to see that coming because they think that we're idiots. So I'm just going to keep smiling and nodding and studying their playbook and applying it to our own situations. Because this has to be law. This has to be something that's on the books everywhere. So that's pretty much the technique that I've decided we're going to go with for now, because I've tried them all in the last 2 years. I started with just screaming and running quickly and it worked initially, but I think I've graduated and it's time to start thinking more tactically and limit the moves that I personally make to make sure that they're like death blows. It has to completely knock out one of their efforts. Because the board just feels like it's getting smaller and smaller. So being tactical, making sure we keep our plays off of the front lines. Like, don't divulge all the secrets on Twitter or Facebook. We've got to have meetings like this to ensure that this isn't information for everybody to know, because everything we do, they will use against us. So this is perfect. This is exactly where these kind of tactics need to be shared. They'll eventually figure it out, but if we can get some, distance between now and the next action, it's going to pay off. So that's what I've been doing, and that's what I need help with.